Well, it's Wednesday, November the 3rd, and I'm Dr. Stites, Chief Medical Officer here at the University of Kansas Health System, broadcasting live with you from the Dulles Simons Family Studio. Delighted to be back with you. Welcome back to Open Mics, and thanks for joining us today here on Facebook and YouTube. Coming up today, we've got a really great program. Working to build the medical profession together. One doctor at the University of Kansas Health System has been recognized for his hard work and serving as a mentor and champion of women in otolaryngology. That's head and neck stuff, just for the rest of us. We'll break down the program and talk to those who nominated him for the He for She Award. Pretty good stuff. So make sure to get your questions sent in to us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and the Medical News Network. Be cool. Do all four of the above. We'll find your links to those right here on your screen. Dr. Hawkinson's going to be joining us in just a moment. He's going to be dropping his kids at school. We'll take a look at the COVID numbers. We also want to talk a little bit about some new news breaking across the United States. We'll also find out if we are able to stay in the low teens of numbers of the new patients yesterday. That was great, but before we get too excited about it, we're going to have a further conversation about why our numbers had dropped. We're also going to talk a little bit about some news coming out from some of the key states like Colorado and Arizona, which are seeing a few rapid surges again as winter comes and folks go back indoors. First, let's take time to meet Dr. Alec. Oh, first of all, let's see if there are reporter questions. Any reporter questions out there today?
Hey, good morning. Cody Holyoke with Channel 9.
Cody, welcome back.
Hey, thank you. So big day for parents and kids after the CDC director approved the Pfizer vaccine for kids 5 to younger than 12. I'm curious, moving forward, what the biggest hurdle is in your department, when it comes to healthcare and having to get through this and get kids their shots.
Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, throw the graphic up there, guys. Throw the graph. We'll just talk about that right now, as this question allows me to get into this right now. So here you go. Look at the rates up here between the vaccinated and unvaccinated, both for having Delta and the percentage of deaths, so the number of deaths. That is a stark reminder, and you can find this, and the New York Times publishes it every day. And even though up to 68% now of Americans who are 12 and older are fully vaccinated, the real issue is that means we're still 32% are not vaccinated, and that's 12 and older, and then all the young kids. And look at this difference. Then the second point to remember is what we heard Dr. Myers say yesterday, the infectious disease director at Children's, about what's the story going on, because there are a lot of deaths in young kids, not like older adults, but there are a lot of deaths in young children from COVID-19. So the story is clear when you look at that graph and you look at the numbers in the United States. And now you're starting to see what else happened. You're seeing in Colorado, as people go back inside without mask mandates, the numbers in Colorado are higher than they've been at any time in the pandemic since September 2020. So over a year ago, and now Colorado has an ICU bed shortage. They're starting to say they can triage care, so they only have to take care of the sicker person and tell people they can't be seen in the ER if they're really sick. Unless they're really sick, because they don't have enough hospital beds. Arizona is also rising again at a very rapid rate. Why is that? Well, it's that one third of America who's still not fully vaccinated. How do we solve that? We've got to get people vaccinated. Because go back to that first graph we saw, right? Hospitalizations, deaths. It's so much higher in the unvaccinated than it is in the vaccinated. The second thing another thing we've learned is that if you're immunocompromised, you don't need 2 shots, you need 3, and then you need a booster 6 months later, so really 4 shots if you're going to stay safe. Because what we know about the patients who are hospitalized and vaccinated is they largely fall into the category of folks who have lots of underlying diseases. There is a compelling narrative that's emerging, and the narrative is it's not over and we're still at risk. Nobody really wants. We want to be celebratory and have a great time, but as the weather gets colder, people go inside, you're not vaccinated, you're at risk. These bad outcomes, like the graph shows, still happen. And so as a result, COVID is still very real. How do we handle that? We've got to get these young kids vaccinated, because now we can vaccinate the 5 to 11-year-olds, And that's really important because those 5 to 11-year-olds gather together in schools, they go on the playground, whatever. They bring it back, the virus back home. Folks are inside. The virus spreads within a household. People get sick. They get hospitalized. So the answer to this puzzle that we struggle with every day is still the same one we've always known. The answer is that the rules of infection control keep you safe wherever you go up until this moment and every day forward. And number 2, that vaccination is our way out of the pandemic. So we can get there, but it means these 5 to 11-year-olds need to get vaccinated. We know that 1/3 of parents are really anxious to get their children vaccinated. Another 1/3 of parents are like, I don't want to ever get my kid vaccinated. And another 1/3 of parents are a little hesitant and trying to decide. What I know as a physician who's worked in this COVID space for far longer than I ever wanted to is that vaccination holds the key. And as we get into these winter months, the rules of infection control have not gone away. So we've got to get people vaccinated. We'll be ready to give vaccinations, I believe, on Monday. I know Children's is ready to start giving them today. So it's time to take advantage of this major announcement from the CDC and the FDA. Vaccination to 5 to 11-year-olds is safe, safe, safe. We need to get going. Cody, did I answer your question? I hope that was my opening monologue. You just got it there, guy.
That's good, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Other questions?
Hi, this is Jordan from Channel 41. I
Hey,
have
Jordan.
2 questions.
Yep.
Let's talk about the mayor today. It might be in Kansas City, Missouri, might be proposing a new ordinance and having kids 18 and younger wear masks, and adults may not have to wear them indoors. Agree, disagree with this? Maybe why it's so important that kids keep wearing the mask while they're still in school.
Yeah. So I think the message here is that not enough young people are fully vaccinated, and so as a result, masking is still really important. I know it's hard right now to keep doing political mandates like mask wearing for adults because the numbers have dropped. I think we have to be really cautious. I think we should look at Colorado, where vaccination rates are higher than they are in Missouri and Kansas, and ask ourselves, why is there a major surge? You saw the graph a moment ago that demonstrates clearly that if you're not vaccinated, you're far more at risk for hospitalization and death. And the second thing is that as the weather gets colder and masks are off and people are indoors, I think if we do that, I think we're going to see another surge. We've been saying that on this program for a while, and I believe Colorado and Arizona are beginning to demonstrate that. Colorado most certainly. Arizona numbers are rising rapidly as well. Actually, in multiple states throughout the West, they're rising. The New York Times also has that graph that looks at how we're doing on the coronavirus by region. And if you look at it, the numbers have been declining in every region. But if you look at the last week or so, that's not true anymore. The numbers in the West are starting to rise again. The numbers in the Midwest are flattening. I mean, every region is beginning to see either a flattening on the decline or a slight uptick. Northeast, same story. So, there's that graph, and then there's the one of the 4 regions, guys. I don't know if you can get to that, but this is where all the potential hotspots across the United States, and you see that big swath there, kind of in the Midwest, the west to far west, that region, and there you can see where we need to be concerned. So I think the answer to the question, Jordan, is this. Young folks need to wear masks indoors because there's not enough folks vaccinated in that age range. I think as far as masks coming off in those 18 and older, inside, the numbers are down, but I would be very leery of what that invitation is to COVID-19 once the masks fully come off inside. And all we have to do is look at states that have a higher vaccination rate, like Colorado, where that's been going on, and see what happens. And the rise in Colorado is amongst the unvaccinated. And so I'd be really cautious with taking masks off indoors at this point still.
And then kind of a 2-parter here. You guys said that you hope to start giving kids the vaccine on Monday. And then, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So then my question is, I have a coworker who says his kid's afraid to get the vaccine. He's not sure, what if his pediatrician doesn't have it? How do you calm your child's fears about getting the vaccine from somebody they don't know?
That's a great question, and it's a question that we face with children all the time. And I think that first off, pediatricians' offices are going to get this vaccine. It's more stable and than its prior formulation, and so it can be given and dispensed in offices. And if a child's really nervous about going to get it, I'd wait an extra 3 or 4 days and get it in the pediatrician's office where the child knows the pediatrician, because that they're going to be able to get it in their offices and it's going to be safe. And so I think if your child has a lot of fear, I would do that because that way they're getting the vaccination from someone they know. And I think you can also go to a place like Children's Mercy or our pediatric clinic where there are a lot of children. We take care of kids a lot, and I think that is another good place to go because they'll be ready for that. And then I think it's just an honest conversation. And I know there's a lot of support literature out there. There's different websites you can go to. And I would just say, sit down, have that conversation. And as an adult, another important thing to do, honestly, is to demonstrate that you believe in the safety of being vaccinated yourself and then talking about that. And so I think trying to do those steps that would calm our children anytime apply to this as well. Other questions?
Thank you.
You bet. All right. I want you to meet Dr. Alex Chiu. These are pictures taken as he received the He for She Award in Los Angeles last month. Folks, this is approximately a really big deal. The award recognizes a male otolaryngologist who serves as a strong mentor, collaborator, and a champion of women in otolaryngology. He's sitting to my left this morning. He is an outstanding physician, and I want you to meet Dr. Chiu. But first, we wanted to introduce you to one person who nominated him for the He for She Award. Our Alexis Sid spoke with Dr. Jennifer Villwock.
You've talked about an important moment in which Dr. Chiu made a real impression on you very early on that has stuck with you throughout your career.
Dr. Chiu was my fellowship mentor, and as part of that process you go and you interview at a bunch of different places. And I remember walking down the hall with him, and one of the other faculty, was basically yelling down the hall, but she was like, "Don't forget to tell Jennifer that if she wants to have another baby in fellowship, we're totally cool with that." And he went on to wholeheartedly affirm that statement. And I think that's just one example in which sometimes women can feel as if they have to make these unfair choices, right? Like you need to either focus on your career or go be a stay-at-home mom. And the reality is that many of us are very talented at a variety of different things, and we should be able to be full humans, both personally and professionally.
Are there microaggressions that you experience on the regular as a woman who's a doctor?
Yes.
What are they?
It's things from, walking into a patient's room, having this big discussion about, the type of surgery that they need and, why, having walked in and introduced yourself as the doctor. And then at the end of the conversation, sometimes the patient will look at you and be like, "Great, when am I going to see the doctor?"
Are there things that happen professionally that Dr. Chiu doesn't do, but that you have noticed in your time going through school, your fellowship, your professional life, that isn't always the case?
Yeah, I think that, and there's actually even data and published studies to support what I'm about to say next, but oftentimes just the utilization of professional titles. And so oftentimes at conferences, there'll be a panel of folks with expertise in a specific area, and the person moderating the panel will be like, "And here we have," I'll use, some random names, "So here we have Dr. Smith and Dr. Jones and Jennifer and Sarah." And you're like, "Well, we all have the exact same credentials, we did the exact same training, but why is it that the men are called doctor and the women are just referred to by their first name?"
This interview with us is going to air live for Dr. Chiu when he's sitting on the set. Is there any message that you want to say to him directly in regards to this award that you nominated him for?
I'll just say that, when the announcement came out for the award, there were a number of the women faculty in our department sitting together in conference, and we all kind of looked at each other and we were like, "Oh, this award obviously belongs to Dr. Chiu. We just have to file the paperwork to make it happen." And so I truly could not think of a better, advocate, a better sponsor, someone who's always trying to improve and be thoughtful, and really just make everybody's life as professionally and personally fulfilling as possible. And so, I can't think of a better person for this award. And we were also thrilled when we learned that he was the inaugural recipient.
Wow, that's pretty cool stuff and great words to hear about you. And so thank you for joining us on the set this morning, Alex Chiu. Notice I didn't say Dr. Chiu that time. Okay, this is a funny story. Though. One time I had Erin Corvo here, and she's a family medicine physician. And then I had, I don't remember who the other person was. So I got a call from Belinda later in the day. She was so mad at me. And I'm like, why are you so mad at me? She goes, do you realize you never said Dr. Corvo? You just kept saying Erin the whole time. And I was like, wow, my wife's going to kill me because that's just not right. And so, this is a big deal. And I think that sometimes those microaggressions are really important, and not sometimes, all the times, those microaggressions are really important. And so the fact that you're a leader, you've been clearly recognized by this from otolaryngologists across the country, that's a really big deal. So congratulations. We are also joined by another member of the head and neck surgery department, Dr. Lisa Shnayder. Dr. Shnayder, welcome to our program.
Thank you for
Always
inviting
a pleasure
me.
to have you here. Dr. Chiu, let's start with you. All right, so first of all, talk to us about what the He for She movement is and how you got involved in that.
So first of all, it's probably the best honor I've ever received in my career.
Yeah,
I've been at it for a while, and when I received the award from Dr. Litvack, who's going to join us later on, I truly was at a loss for words, and I'm rarely ever for a loss of words.
That's true, everybody. You said a question about that.
So it's been an incredible honor. But what I don't want to get lost in all this is it's not so much a celebration of me. I don't want this to be a celebration of me. It's never been about me. It's about what we stand for here at KU. It's about what we stand for in the Department of Otolaryngology at KU. And that department is filled with women leaders. And when Dr. Villwock talked about a women doctor maybe not getting the respect, it's even worse for a woman surgeon. And some of the best surgeons I've ever trained, that I've ever worked with, including Dr. Shnayder, are technically and from a patient standpoint, the best surgeons, and that I would want operating on me. And so for someone that believes in a just world and everyone getting their fair share and getting what they deserve, gosh, I want our women surgeons to get all the credit, to have the patients to be benefiting from their expertise and their care and their technical expertise, and to really get the word out that for men, we need to do what we can in order to really make our patients understand that.
Yeah, isn't it true that to me, we will think exactly the same thing I think in here. This should be about your quality and your skill, not about your gender, your sexual preference, the color of your skin, all those other things, because we just keep people down like that. And why would we want to do that? Don't we want the best talent to always rise up? So yeah, man, I'm so with you. So how did you get involved in the He for She movement? And just talk to us a little bit from an otolaryngology standpoint. What is that?
Yeah, so, the He for She movement, I think, was made, and I'm looking at Dr. Shnayder, I think the He for She movement was made popular from a picture, if I believe.
Yeah, it was a movement that was started actually by the United Nations in 2014, and also by Emma Watson, who was an ambassador. And this essentially is a celebration of male colleagues and getting them involved into promoting the notions of gender equality and women achieving professional goals.
So guys, talk to us a little bit about how it has helped or impacted both of you.
Well, for me, just like you, Steve, I make mistakes all the time.
Yeah,
and you've got to have the humility.
I'm really good at those.
Me too.
Turns out.
But you got to surround yourself with smart people, and I think every leader understands that. So for me, I made the mistake. I was part of these academic meetings and councils in which I would be a part of an all-male panel. And when you're trying to let people know that there are wonderful women surgeons that know more, if not the same, but more than you know, then you can't just be part of a male panel and just talk to male panel. And when I say panels, folks, as academic physicians and surgeons, we not only take care of the sickest of the sick, but we teach. We teach people from all over the world, practitioners, students that go on to be practitioners. And so we're role modeled. And so when we're on a podium, on a stage, what we say actually reverberates. And it reverberates tenfold because they then teach their people that they interact with. So if you're showing an example that only male surgeons know how to do such and such, that's just a wrong example to send. And so I've spent many years on male panels, and one day one of my colleagues turned to me and said, do you know that you're on a male panel and you're really not giving women surgeons an opportunity? And that kind of hit home to me to say, I'm living a little bit of a fraud by saying how I really try to encourage diversity, equity, inclusion, and yet I'm not taking a stand against something as important as that.
Yeah, and it makes a difference. How has that impacted you, Doctor?
Well, I certainly, as Dr. Villwock was saying, that Dr. Mecha Fox, who was another nominator, and Dr. Villwock and myself, we all experienced the ways in which Dr. Chiu really not only supports and mentors the women. The women are nowadays mentored very well, especially in academic medicine, but also recognizes leadership potential, recognizes that you would be good for that position and you would be good for this position. And as a matter of fact, among our 6 women in our department, we have a woman associate residency director, a woman head and neck division director, a woman residency program director, a woman associate dean of the School of Medicine for diversity, equity, and inclusion, Dr. Francis. So he talks the talks and he walks the walks.
Yeah, and it's a great role model and a great example to set for other people to be able to rise up. Because it's also true within your department, there's the gender balance, but there's also diversity in race and other types of diversity. So I think that's a big story to tell. So, all right, we have first of all, I want to recognize the Hawks here. He has been able. So, Hawk, just real quick, how are our numbers today?
The numbers, we said that, the 12,
Yeah.
we shouldn't get focused on one number. I think that's the key, and we said that yesterday. Numbers are 17 active infections today with 2 in the ICU and 2 on the ventilator. Those ICU patients are on the ventilator. Only 1 fully vaccinated patient of those 17 active infections. We still have 21 additional in that recovery period, so a total of 38.
And so part of the way we'd gotten down is we had a number of deaths recently, including one yesterday. We had 5 deaths in the last couple of days. And that's partly why the numbers were dropped. They're going to come back up. And again, if you take your masks off, you go inside, there's unvaccinated people, count on a Delta variant surge, again, coming our way. All right, so we have another very special guest joining us, Dr. Jaime Litvack. I think I got that right. I even got the Jamie part right. Is the sinus surgeon at Elson S. Floyd College of Medicine at Washington State University. She's also the immediate past section chair of Women in Otolaryngology at the American Academy of Otolaryngology. Man, that is rolling off my tongue, that otolaryngology thing. So, Dr. Litvack, thank you so much for joining us this morning. How did the creation of this new award, talk to us a little bit about that and what it means and how Dr. Chiu was selected?
Sure. Well, thank you, first of all, for having me here. And I want to say I am just thrilled that we were able to award Dr. Chiu with the inaugural He for She Award. He has just been a tremendous mentor, collaborator, and champion of women otolaryngologists. So we're absolutely thrilled. The award was inspired by the movement, as was referenced earlier. And the Women in Otolaryngology section of the American Academy created this award to highlight and celebrate our male colleagues who champion female otolaryngologists in the workplace. And as Dr. Chiu pointed out, it comes in many different forms, right? The mantle is a good example of that. So this can be sponsorship, it can be collaboration, it can be mentorship, and most importantly, being a trusted ally.
Yeah, that's approximately a really big deal. So talk to us about how this program, both Dr. Shnayder and Dr. Litvack, how has this program helped advance women in the field of otolaryngology and elsewhere?
Well, we're just getting started. So one of the challenges, I can really only speak for otolaryngology, but we have a major gender-based gap in leadership, compensation, and career progression. Only 5% of academic chairs are women. We have limited senior leadership in most of our otolaryngology journals, and we have a greater than $100,000 pay gap each year. So you can imagine, and that's one of the largest of any field in medicine, but this is a problem across all fields in medicine. So you can imagine over a 25-year career, that could add up to $2.5 million. And so we really appreciate what Dr. Chiu's been doing to be personally involved with things like increasing editorial leadership, supporting academic promotions proactively, and then supporting transparent and equitable compensation.
Yeah, I look out across the spectrum and you see all these folks, all these problems right now, especially with men perhaps not behaving the best around women. And this is such the polar opposite of that. So how did you get to be that guy?
You got to credit your parents, but
Yeah.
you have to credit, you just have to credit the people around you. So I was never that guy 10 years ago. I wouldn't have recognized who I am now 10 years ago. And I think it's partly and largely based on my interactions with my friends and colleagues. It's the want to be a better person, and it's also having strong colleagues that will tell you when you're not that better person. Mm-hmm. So I try to encourage all my friends and colleagues to tell me when I'm doing things wrong. Give me suggestions. Give me help. Let's do this together.
All the Belinda Vales out there in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Keeping you honest and keep making you better. So, Dr. Shnayder.
Well, as I wanted to echo Dr. Litvack's comments, and we have a lot of work to do in academic medicine and in otolaryngology, because about 51% of all medical students are women, but only 25% of all full professors are women in academic medicine. And how do you get promoted to full professor? You get grand round speaking opportunity and graduation speaking opportunity, and this has to be deliberate. You cannot just wait for 100 years until those 50% of medical students will translate into 50% of professors. So Dr. Chiu created and put resources up to support Eaton Hall lecture series to invite speakers to speak about gender equality and diversity and inclusion issues on campus. So that's how you bridge the gap.
So is this something that is spread through other institutions, or is this kind of a KU thing? Talk to us about its national bandwidth. Dr. Litvack. Did I say that right? Dr. Litvack. I knew I could get it right.
You said it right, Dr. Litvack. Yeah. So I would say that we are moving in that direction. And we're doing a lot of different organized activities. We're certainly not using it under the name he for she specifically, but we're definitely making more movements nationally. And also, I mean, our other colleagues are doing it. So in orthopedic surgery, they also do a he for she award.
That's awesome, and I think that's another field where there aren't a lot of women in that field. I even think of our own hospital. I know we don't have many women here in orthopedic surgery. I think there's one or maybe two, so not a lot. So I think it's an important recognition.
And I will say, at the end of the day, I think we're all here to take care of patients and provide the best care we can. And it really comes back to respecting our teams, right? So this is one example of that, but, we're looking for that, not just with gender, but with other issues in medicine right now, that if we want to provide the best patient care, it starts with our teams, right? We respect our team, we respect our trainees, we respect our patients, we respect our patients' families. And so it's very important that we continue to progress in our, ability to provide better equity in the workplace.
Yeah, that's really incredible, I think, and such a really big deal for how to do it. So talk to us a little bit. What's the nomination and selection process like?
So all members of our academy, we have about 10,000 otolaryngologists across the country. All male members are candidates for the application process. I want to emphasize, they were selected by professional peer women who wrote letters of recommendations, and we had a very strong candidate pool this year. And it was really exciting to see the nice range of activities that our male colleagues have been involved in and the different initiatives they've been taking, we don't have the answer, right? So we're all working through it together. So it's great to see what people are doing. From that process, there is a committee that reviews all the applications, and Dr. Chiu's application really stood out for his wholehearted proactive support in a range of activities, from clinical to research to outreach activities when it comes to inclusive diversity and equity. And I think one of his female colleagues who nominated him really captured the spirit of the ward when she said that anyone can post a nice selfie with the caption he for she, but it takes integrity to decline participation in panels, these all-male panels we're talking about, published pieces on medicine's Me Too crisis and the lack of diversity in our field, and openly support transparent and equitable compensation. And I think that says it all.
Yeah, that's pretty darn good. So when you started declining that kind of stuff, what do people look at you and say?
Yeah, I think you get the snide comments, I think, from some male colleagues that don't quite get it. But then you just have to, you're doing the right thing. And that's why I keep on telling myself is, I've got 2 young boys and I want them to be raised in a world in which they're generous and thoughtful and empathetic. And so I keep on asking myself, what kind of role model can I be for those kids, and what kind of role model can I be for the trainees and the medical students that are learning and going to take care of that next generation of patients. And what Jaime alluded to is that I'm part of what's called ENT Today, which is our journal for our specialty. We're otolaryngologists, but otherwise known as ear, nose, and throats. And this is the People magazine, per se, of otolaryngology that goes out to every otolaryngologist in the country. And that journal, we highlight a lot of these issues, and we're intentional about highlighting the pay equity gap. We're intentional about highlighting the leadership gap. And we've got our editorial board filled of brilliant, funny, sarcastic women who write just beautifully. And those issues come to our doorsteps and to otolaryngologists' doorsteps every month, and they bring the issues to the forefront. So again, it's not me doing the work, it's me enabling and helping others to really put their best foot forward. And it's become the most entertaining journal, that's the highest well-read journal in otolaryngology, on the strength of a lot of my female editorial board colleagues.
And People magazine.
And People magazine, yeah.
So here's another question. So here's one, and you hear this story a little bit, some. All right, so if women are, this is a very just a generic stereotype, right? If women are at home a little more, they work a little less, should they get paid the same? Is that the cause of the gap? Or are people just saying, even if 2 folks are working together at the same rate, I'm going to pay the guy a little bit more? How do those 2 things? I'd love to have your comments on both. What do you think?
Go ahead.
Well, for me, it's I think before we used to always think about productivity as being the amount of hours you spend in the office. Yep. And I think the pandemic has changed that. And for me, for a long time, I've thought of productivity as how effective you are. And so what I would love to reward is effectiveness, is your ability to take great care of patients, to influence others around you, to be a great leader as well as a great role player within that department. And I think my women surgeons, quite honestly, do that better than my male surgeons do in a lot of ways. And so that's how I view on that. Lisa,
that's pretty good.
I'd love to hear your opinion.
Well, I think that when we hear conversations about the pay gap, it's not that there is some evil person sitting there and say, haha, you're a woman, I'll pay you 80 cents per RVU or less, or you're a man, I'll pay you more. It's just that at some other places, the compensation is not transparent.
Yeah.
And women sometimes are put in these situations where they have fewer clinic hours, or maybe they have more various service obligations, and they are just not given an opportunity to work as many clinic hours.
So it can be a really subtle form of discrimination, right? Because that's what I think that's really true. Dr. Litvack, talk to us a little bit about what you see nationally as your leader in your leadership role.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, I have a kind of a strong opinion on this, in that I agree all these things are possible. The best studies out there that adjust for all of the things that we can think of, hours, years of experience, NIH funding, promotions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, still cannot explain 40% of that disparity. Cannot find a rational reason for it. And I would say that I would take a step even further back and say that this is probably, this is about the way that we've socialized ourselves in America, right? I am just as guilty of gender discrimination as potentially my male colleague is, right? I think it's, we as a society have decided what we value is more important. And just to put this into very interesting perspective, there was a study about 20 years ago looking at common OB and urologic procedures. So similar procedures, biopsies of similar anatomy not similar, but parallel identity or parallel anatomy parts. And the majority of the urologic procedures had higher RVUs associated with those procedures than the OB procedures, majority. This study was published about 20 years ago. It was updated a few years ago, and still the majority were higher for the urologic procedure than the OB procedure. And if you look at the way that we decide the value for a procedure, it goes through a special committee, through a very specific process, and there's actually a small group of people that determine the amount of work that's associated with each of those procedures. And to put it bluntly, there was very few women in the room at that time, and so this is a big issue. This is a societal issue that we have a lot of work to do on, and we're making progress.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think the roots of discrimination run deep, and they sometimes are very hidden from view, but it doesn't make them any less present or any less, I want to say strangling, but that's not even the right word for it, than just because you can't always see them. And to your point, unless you delve deep into the very origins of it, you'll often have a hard time trying to understand why it's there. Go ahead, please.
Just one last thing. I would say for our goals are really, let's just get to equity, right? Let's just get it to be similar at least, and then we can go ahead and rationalize, why. we're all surgeons here, and we're interested in outcomes. So I think our ultimate goal here is just to get rid of this pay gap.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just so much of the gaps in general. So, which is one more reason to watch Star Trek Discovery. Episode, the 4th season drops November the 18th, and you can meet the leader of Star Trek Discovery. Well, I don't want to have a spoiler, but let's just say, not a man. All right. Jess, what questions are out there? Oh, we can't hear you, Jess. We can't hear you.
Oh, this is what happens.
Hey, Jess, remember? It's called the pandemic, and you have to kind of hit the microphone button.
That's what I know.
There
Okay,
you go.
I'm on it. Okay, so Joy has a question. Just curious about how do conversations like what we're having today impact patient care? How does this award benefit patients? Ultimately, because that's what it's about.
You bet. That's a great question. I have my answer, but yes,
Can
ma'am.
I take that?
Please.
Yeah.
I was going to turn to both of you. Go for it. Dr. Shnayder.
So there was a study in 2017 by Ashish Jha group from Harvard in the JAMA Internal Medicine that looked at outcomes such as 30-day readmission rate and 30-day mortality for patients taken care of by female internists versus male internists. And obvious to me, the patients taken care of by female internists did better, because the assumption was, and obviously we can speculate, that they adhered more to the national guidelines and standards, etc. But those were the obvious studies looking at the obvious outcomes.
Dr. Villwock.
I'll take that one, Dr. Litvack. Yeah. At the end of the day, let's talk about stories. So all of us have probably gone to or heard a situation where a family member or a friend went to the office and they said, you know what, the doctor didn't listen to me. They didn't understand what I had going on. They said nothing was wrong with me. And I think that's what it comes back to, right? Is when we have diverse teams working together, it's a sign of respect, it's a sign of understanding, and none of us understand all of the different experiences of humanity. But the more diverse teams we have, the better ability we have to take good care of patients and really understand their whole experience and ultimately what they want from us to take the best care of them.
Yeah, comments? I have a story to tell, but comment for you, Dr. Chiu, anything?
No, I love this hour because I'm learning from both Dr. Shnayder and Litvack. I mean, I really am impressed, and
Well, I'm just going to say, I just said Dr. Vitlack instead of Dr. Litvack, and I'm sorry, but you knew who I was talking about. I'm terrible with names. It's just an inherent problem I have. Okay, so I'm always impressed how this story is repeated so often in so many different spheres. So if you look at studies about corporations that outperform other corporations, corporations that have diverse environments, gender, race, ethnic, whatever, outperform those who don't by 35%. And a lot of the data, and we're trying to look at this very question here, because our leadership team at this health system needs more diversity to it, right? We do really well on gender diversity. We don't do so well on ethnic and racial diversity, so we're working on that. And you look at this data, and it's like, well, of course, if you let people shine, if you have talent, as opposed to keeping people down because they look different than you, they think differently, they act a little differently than you. Well, by doing that, you create a very narrow workforce, right? You create a very narrow view of the world, and then you can't possibly do as good a job of taking care of patients. And you go out there and you look at our patients, they're very diverse. And I don't think it's going to take one kind of person to take care of all this diverse group of folks. So what we really need to do is encourage people by letting them shine. And if you let folks do that, I think you have a better outcome, male, female, race, what have. And my other favorite story to talk about is the rise of black quarterbacks in the NFL, right? How many people didn't get to play quarterback because they were black? And look, how much talent did we miss out on because we did that? Well, that's just dumb. So why don't we let talent shine? And I think that's really the key to that message. And also just to say, it kills me every day I read about the national women's soccer team making so much less than the men's soccer team, and the women's soccer team is so much better and has been so much better for so many years, and yet they still make far less. You're just like, you got to be kidding me.
And this is not to say that women are necessarily better than men as physicians or soccer players or anybody, but you have to bring it to parity. You cannot have 20% when the population is 50-50.
Right. No, I just let people shine. Jess.
Yeah, Stephanie has a question for Dr. Shnayder and Dr. Litvack. How do you mentor? What principles do you follow when you're mentoring other people coming up underneath you? What words do you have for them?
I'll start. I think it's a very important question, and I think it is very important for us, especially in the surgical specialty, to pay it forward. So I certainly have a few mentees within our residency program with whom I meet regularly and encourage them to look at leadership opportunities and to look at fellowships and to look at improving and getting to their professional goals. But I think it is also very important to look at the pipeline and look at the young girls who want to go into medicine and go into surgery. And even one single comment, such as to a young woman in college, if somebody says, oh, if you ever want to have kids or have a family, you shouldn't go into medicine. So that can kill potentially a future cardiothoracic surgeon's career. So I think this is also very important to bring high school kids to shadow us, and I have been certainly doing that through the department.
All right. Dr. Litvack, thoughts?
It's hard to, a lot of this is about framework, and it's hard to dream something if you can't see it. And so one of the things that I put a high value on is helping young people have an opportunity to see it. And that may just be shadowing in the office. It literally may be shadowing in my personal life. One of my favorite residents actually started by seeing what our personal life was like and then started shadowing at work, and it's been inspired to be in our profession. And so I think showing them kind of our whole lives and what that looks like, and then also just the tangible, like, oh, if I can do it, you can do it too. And that just, I can't tell you how important that is for people to be able to see someone that looks like them be in positions that they would never imagine themselves in. Especially with surgery, right? That's kind of one of those sort of intimidating things that you see on TV, and just seeing us in real life and what we do makes it a very real dream and a very accessible opportunity for other people. So I'm a big fan of showing the next generation and what we're up to.
Yeah, that's a big. That is great. So a big shout out, a big thank you, Dr. Lisa Shnayder, who just had to head out to go to take her patient to operate. Exactly. So how did this great awakening happen for you? Well, what changed it? Because it sounds like you think, well, my parents taught me the right thing, things are going right, but then someday something happened. What was it that changed?
I don't think it was one thing. I think it was a couple different things, and I will tell this one story. And so this is a story of a different field that's related, but it's of surgical representatives. So these are sales representatives in the operating room. And when I grew up, it was very common to see female surgical reps who would be representing equipment, products, so on and so forth in the operating room. Over the years, I've realized I rarely, if ever, see female surgical reps anymore. And the reason why, I was told one day by a surgical rep, was because they were being harassed so much because they wear scrub tops. And every time that they would walk into the room, inevitably someone would make a comment or try to look down their scrub top. And that kind of hit me as to say, gosh, imagine if my wife was there or my sister was doing that job, and every day they walked into work, they had to dress in a different fashion, or they had to be so super conscious of how they moved so that someone wouldn't look down their scrub top. So I don't know if that's the specific moment, Steve, but that was a big time moment where I thought, gosh, we've got to try to do better. We've got to be a better people, a better microcosm of society right here in academic medicine.
Yeah. That's a great story, a good story. Jess?
So I have a question I want to ask Dr. Litvack. Vanessa wanted to know if there was an impactful moment in your life when you decided you wanted to be a physician and what path you followed to do so.
Sure. So I wanted to be a physician when I was a kid, but I will say that when I was in college, I was working with refugees in Croatia in the early 90s. It was about 9 months after the war, and working with children in a camp from various parts of former Yugoslavia, and realizing that I wanted to help people, and I could do that with the work I was doing, but I felt like the biggest impact I could have is being a doctor and helping people. So I could go back, and as a physician, I would be able to do more than I was feeling I could do at the time. So that was my initial inspiration for being a doctor. I will say that when it comes to being an otolaryngologist, that again, when it comes to these kind of random role models and moments that you have in your training, I remember that the chief of the otolaryngology service, so the senior resident, was this amazing woman who ran marathons and was universally loved, and she was just super cool, and she was probably the inspiration for Grey's Anatomy because she was about that same time period. And I just remember thinking highly of her and then thinking like, oh yeah, I can do this too. And I didn't stay in touch with her. I didn't, she wasn't a former role model or a mentor, but certainly that was very inspiring to me in terms of the field of otolaryngology and being a surgeon.
Yeah, that's a big deal. And Hawkeye, in your division, you have some pretty outstanding female physicians. I just know Dr. Lisa Clough, who I've known for a long time, and others. I mean, it makes such a difference when you have a great group of folks all around you.
Yeah, it's all about diversity, new ideas, different ideas, just kind of opening up those conversations.
Jess?
Couple more questions, but I want to go back to what Dr. Litvack was saying about, and you kind of mentioned it about being represented just in society, and even like you mentioned Grey's Anatomy, but how important was that for you to see? We talk about young women seeing themselves in some of those roles in society, and even in pop culture. But how much of a role did that play for you, and how important was that? And is that? Me? Yes, for you.
Well, see, that's the thing. I don't think any of us consciously realize that, right? I mean, that's part of that's why this is not just about gender, right? This is about underrepresented groups in medicine. It's about race and color. Like the importance of creating more diversity in our physician workforce is that, you don't necessarily realize you can even do this if you don't. Again, I think it's subconscious. I never set out to say because I had female role models, I can be a surgeon, but just having that there allowed me to change my internal framework and say, oh yeah, I can totally do this. I think that's true for a lot of us with any major challenge we have in life, right? Is that we just need to be able to see it, to believe it.
I have a couple of questions. Back to a couple COVID questions I wanted to sneak in, Dr. Stites, if that's okay, because I know we're running out of time. But Donna wants to know, is it a CDC recommendation for immunocompromised people to get 4 shots? immunocompromised
it's really,
people.
Hawkeye, it's 3 shots and then a booster 6 months after the 3rd shot.
Yeah, that's a simple answer. Yep.
Okay, Lori wants to know, how long do you have to wait to get a COVID booster vaccine after getting a Tdap vaccine?
You don't have to wait at all. You can actually get both of them at the same visit. So.
And we're giving both influenza and COVID shots on the same date.
Absolutely.
Are you giving same arm, different arms?
Yeah. I think they're doing different arms.
Okay.
But I think even last week in clinic, I had given at least 2 or 3 different vaccines, including a COVID booster to one of my patients. So we're doing it.
And you mentioned yesterday, and I had a couple of I've actually got some calls about it. Can you explain to us again why it's better to get it in your arm than in your bottom or in your gluteus maximus?
Well, I mean, again, we all have all of our regions of our body all really drain into lymph nodes. So whether it's in the legs or in the arms, the injection is there into the muscle, into the deltoid, and then it drains to that lymph node that is pretty close. And in the lymph node is really where a lot of that immune response takes place. And I think that was where all of the, for adults especially, because they have enough skin and muscle, soft tissue there, that you're not going to be causing any damage. We've heard this about if you're drawing back and you don't want to hit a vessel. Really, those things are not present for in your shoulder. So once you do inject it in that soft tissue, it's going to drain. All of that fluid is really going to drain to that local lymph node, and in that local lymph node is where a majority of that inflammatory immune response reaction is taking place.
All right. So let's go to our final thoughts for the day. Dr. Litvack, I want to start with you. Again, first of all, thank you for being on the program. It's 6 a.m. where you are, as when we started, so you were up really early, but you're a surgeon, so that's probably normal. And I really want to say thank you for being a part of this program. You've done a great job. Love to have you back sometime.
Thank you. This is great. This is a lot of fun.
Final thoughts from today.
Well, I'm just going to shout out to Dr. Chiu again, that we just have profound gratitude for him. He's a true he for she ally and an advocate and a partner for change. So thank you, Dr. Chiu.
All right, Alex Chiu, congratulations again. This
you.
is an outstanding recognition, and well done. What a great standard to set. Final thoughts?
No, and I think this hour really demonstrated what I wanted to get across in the beginning. It's not about me. It's about 2 dynamic female surgeons who just showed you how thoughtful, how much leadership they have and exhibit, and what role models they are and they will be in the future. So thank you, Dr. Litvack, for joining us.
Yeah, we hope that someday there's not a need for this award anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
Yes.
it's all of us for all of us. Wouldn't that be the best?
To be honest, all it made me think is I want to work for Dr. Chiu's department,
Yeah, well, listen, he does a darn good job. I'm not sure. I think he's pretty full. I don't know. I think if you want a job, you call us, you let us know. We'll figure that out.
make room.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Hawkeye, final thoughts.
Not too much to add. I think I heard a couple years ago, and certainly you may have already talked about it before I came on, but I think that the medical students, I think a higher proportion now are female anyways. And I would also say another reason why we don't really give the vaccine in your bottom instead of in your shoulder, it's a lot harder, and most people don't want to do that at CVS or Walgreens, so it's a lot easier to give your shoulder than it is to do the other spot. But overall, we've seen the cases are really holding steady. Unfortunately, we would like them to drop, but we've always said that is not the real bellwether of how things are going. It's more hospitalizations, and unfortunately, Steve, right now our hospitalizations really are staying steady. We would definitely like a further drop, especially with the cooler weather coming on, the gathering season, all of those things. So everybody stay vigilant, and now we know that you will be able to vaccinate your children. That will be important, especially if they've had it. Giving them those dose of vaccines is going to help them further evolve that immune response so that any new variants that may come through, they will be protected from that as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. And that is exactly right. We want everybody to be protected. Hey, with the CDC set to approve the Pfizer vaccine today, actually they did it yesterday. The full CDC will do that today. The advisory committee did yesterday. There are still 2 other vaccines awaiting approval. One involves an 8-year-old boy. We'll talk with his parents who are doctors here in the health system. He took part in the vaccine trials. We'll hear from the family about the decision on why they think you should get your child vaccinated. First, these final thoughts. You've heard a lot today about how important it is to not discriminate. Remember, COVID-19 doesn't discriminate either. It doesn't care what state you live in, doesn't care what race you are, doesn't care if you're male or female. What your job is to try and stay safe. Actually, there is one thing COVID-19 does discriminate against. If you've been vaccinated, you're a lot safer than if you're not. If you haven't been vaccinated, there's trouble lurking at every corner. Stay safe, get vaccinated, follow the rules of infection control, and let's all live to make sure we're in this together, all of us for all of us. Thanks for joining us this morning. Don't forget, if you miss any of our shows, you can watch them on Facebook or YouTube Live anytime. We'll be back tomorrow, and until then, stay safe out there.
Subscribe to our Morning Medical Update and Open Mics with Dr. Stites podcasts. Now everywhere podcasts are available.